Who recommended this to me? Because it's good. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, your favorite lo-fi music YouTuber, and today we are covering the 2020 release from Rina Sawayama. Now, this is Rina Sawayama's second release, but this is her debut LP, so a lot of people were hyped up for this album, as her EP was pretty great, very hyperpop influenced, but this LP was definitely a little different, with a lot of debuts coming from different parts of the year with different performances. Now, going into this album, I had really high hopes because of some of the previews I heard. I remember hearing this because my friend kind of put me on the album, and first things first, I gotta tell you guys, the production on this album is incredible. This is one of the cleanest albums I've ever heard, and of course, with time changing, albums should get cleaner and cleaner, but this thing, it doesn't feel overproduced. It just feels like a perfect amount of produced, I guess. Also, this album was a request, so that's why we're doing it today. So yeah, what you're going to get with this album is sort of an experimental pop feel that has a lot of nostalgia for 2000s type acts, kind of like Britney Spears, but believe me, what you're getting here is a lot higher quality. So let's just cut the chit-chat, get straight to the album. So the album opens up with the track Dynasty, which a lot of people would say is their favorite track on here. I would disagree, but it is definitely not bad at all. It starts off with this very clean, atmospheric intro with Rina singing over the top, and I gotta admit, her voice is gorgeous. That is one of the biggest highlights of the album. It goes into these sort of chuggy guitar parts, which were super fun. Then you got the second chorus, which sounded amazing. Then it goes into the bridge, which ends just as beautifully. And a lot of people would claim this to be their favorite track, partially because of the lyrics, because it does talk about generational trauma. And while I, for one, do not totally relate, I can see why this is one of the most important songs, probably of recent history, just because so many people can relate to such a thing. And there were a few ways I thought this track might have been symphonic, but it works really well here. I thought the song overall was pretty strong. The next song we got here is XS. Now, lyrically, this song is a critique on materialism. Some people say it's just a critique on pure capitalism. I guess it's up to interpretation. But I just gotta say, I love the metaphor here with the title being XS, which just sounds like excess, which you're going to get a lot of metaphors here, which, while not incredibly thought-provoking with being way too deep and you just have to go on a massive search to find out what it means, you got something that's relatively simple for a metaphor, but it kind of prevents the message from sounding cheesy or just spoon-fed to you. It's very well portrayed, and that happens on pretty much every song on this album. Anyway, the song starts with almost this like power metal type opening that's incredibly percussive. It's pretty awesome. Then it goes into this sort of whirling beat with like muted guitars used for percussion, as well as a whole bunch of other effects. And then you reach sort of the bridge, and then these glitchy effects just wowed me personally. And this song, I'd say, has a relatively conventional structure, but it jams hard. Probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. The next song turned a lot of heads. This song is STFU, and easily one of the more thought-provoking tracks on the whole album. This song is, a good amount of it is nu metal, which, of course, with the metal influence on pop music, an immediate comparison would come up to Poppy's album from this year, but it is definitely different. Poppy's album is a lot more gent, kind of just like metalcore influence, but this stuff is like nu metal type riffs, but somehow Sawayama makes it work here. The singing, I thought, was incredibly gorgeous over these super just chuggy guitars. It was really interesting, and it was almost kind of spacious. I found the vocals almost chilling on this track. The chorus is incredibly impactful. I do think lyrically it is a little weak with just the repetition of STFU over and over again. Maybe she could have just used it one time and then changed up the words a little bit, but the impact is there, so I can't critique it too hard. When you reach the third verse, most of the instrumentals strip back to just a super funky and crunchy nu metal type bass riff. Awesome stuff. It gets you super hyped for that last chorus, which is finished off with these kind of angular sounding chimes, which super experimental for most of the pop I've ever heard, and it was actually really, really cool. The next song is most people's favorite, Comme des Garçons, aka Like the Boys. Now, I love the instrumental on this track. It reminds me kind of Darkwave with just like this sort of goth kind of funk beat, which is really, really nice sonically. The chorus was almost mesmerizing with how it was kind of whirling around. And while it wasn't the most lyrically crazy by any means, it was a little repetitive even. That was actually a really significant boost to the track. The post-chorus had a really chilling effect again. Sawayama showing her chops with just stylistic differences here. The song manages to have a laid-back sound without sounding tired or boring. I thought the lyrics on the song were very nice, and they passed the message in a pretty effective way. The next song is called Akasaka Sad. Now, the intro of the song, it starts symphonic, and I haven't mentioned this much yet, but you can tell with this album that you will not be able to predict the sound of whatever's coming next. It will change to a way you will not expect, but it's not about a way that's out of place somehow. It all seems fitting, where the styles will just differentiate, and that is no different on this song, where it's got this intro, and then it turns into this weird, percussive, sort of bouncy instrumental, which came out of nowhere, but it fits perfectly. It layers these sort of skittering synths over the top, which are really, really nice for me. The chorus does pull you along rather slowly, but it never feels like you're dragging behind. Little thing I note, the second verse is in Japanese, and it sounds good. And the song kind of cycles back to the early symphonics at the very beginning of the track, which was a nice way to round it up. The next song is Paradisen, which is another song that I did not expect the sounds from. Really, the only thing you can expect from any of these tracks is that there's bound to be a rather spacey moment that's kind of chilling, but rather soothing at the same time. The beat's a sort of electro clap beat, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm not usually one for the clap snares. You guys know I've criticized plenty of musicians for that, but for here, it works. I thought the chorus almost sounded like acid house beats, but on absolute steroids. And the chorus, while being as spacey and mesmerizing as it is, it's got a serious momentum to it, which was unexpected. There's a sax solo, which was nice, and then it's got this sort of temporary beat switch, which then leads into a key change, which, it might be a little cliche for a lot of older pop, but it really elevates the song to another level, and it brings the energy once again. The only problem with this song, which actually shows up once again on the album later, is that it's just kind of severed off at the end with no real fitting conclusion for me, which, in a pop song is kind of okay, I guess, but I would have preferred a more fitting ending. The next song is Love Me For Me, and it's about self-love, and in terms of lyrical metaphors on this album, this is another example of how strong they can be. It starts off with a super spacey intro, which is not unheard of on this album so far, but it does work very well. And this is where the sort of Britney influence is coming from. The beat, especially at the beginning of the song, is very 2000s pop oriented, very Britney. And eventually in the song, you get this sort of like space rock sounding guitar solo, which sonically just floored me. I thought that was incredible. And of course, the words on the chorus are top notch. I love them a lot. And after looking through it, and I just loved how, at first, without paying attention, I would not have gotten them. But after just looking at them just a little bit, I totally got them. And there's just such a balance to the metaphors on this album that I can go to the moon and back with. The next track is Bad Friend. Now, this song was very interesting. Honestly, a little Imogen Heap inspired. Sorry, I don't know how to say your name. And I just want to point out that the chorus is a cappella, but with these like vocoders over the back. And it's really, really cool. And it was nice having the instrumental just cut to have it pretty much led by Sawayama's voice, which normally I would rarely ever let an artist just try and carry the entire thing with their voice, but Sawayama does just such a great job, and she's just such a fantastic singer that I wouldn't have it any other way. These synths end up chiming along to the track, which I thought were very impactful. Eventually in this track, I found myself singing along even to the first listen. This is another one of those songs that just kind of ends for right in the middle of nowhere, but I do understand the construction of the album was kind of done. The next song is F This World Interlude. I was not quite sure why it was an interlude, especially this late in the album, but it is actually a really good song. Of course, you have a spacey beat, which is the only predictable thing about this album, but the way the beat is constructed is amazing. It feels like just vocoded reverb of Sawayama's voice where she's singing, and then that forms the beat behind it. It's really incredible. Yeah, this song paints a really hopeless image of the current political climate, the actual climate, current situations, and especially in 2020, which is fitting and quite relatable. And the chorus only happens once, but all the impact was there, so I thought this track was very, very strong overall. Unfortunately, what follows is probably my least favorite track on the whole album, Who's Gonna Save You Now. The entire point of this track was to be as Britney inspired as possible for sort of like a stadium-esque setting. But the issue is the influences from Britney are not the best to sort of copy as much as Sawayama did here. The opening arpeggios were pretty dope here. There were buzzy synths, some really nice sounding guitars, all fit pretty well. But then what follows after that is the most generic poppy sound on the whole album. The bridge does have a really nice high note that Sawayama hits perfectly, of course. She's a fantastic singer. Unfortunately, the construction of this track is so generic that it does kind of dock itself for me. Fortunately for the album, the best track, in my opinion, is what follows this song. This song is Tokyo Love Hotel, which in a current social climate where weebs are a thing, this song couldn't have been at a better time. And with the instrumental of this track, I would find it almost impossible to believe if Sawayama said she hadn't listened to Plastic Love and really tried to emulate that same feeling. The metaphor of the title is basically that she's saying that the state of Japan is almost treated or like fetishized by more Western audiences, and it's incredibly sad. And not that I can relate personally, but I'm hearing it, and it's definitely striking a chord with me. I thought the snare hits, especially towards the end of this track, were very impactful and heavy. I loved them a lot. And then the bridge was very nostalgic sounding. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of something I would have seen on like Disney Channel during a commercial break, but not to detract from its quality, it was actually quite excellent. Following this is the track Chosen Family, which this song has a rather trudging beat, but there are these cute synths over the top of it that help it go a little faster. Some guitar reverb was used on the second verse, which I thought was very nice. The guitar part was pretty fulfilling overall. And if any song is carried on vocals, this would be one of the best examples here. The vocals are phenomenal. And also the build towards the last chorus is kind of what you wait for this song for. The trudging beat does kind of escalate to this climax, really, which very satisfying. I mean, it's not every day you see a pop song with this kind of construction, and it was really great. And that song is followed by the conclusion to the album, which I gotta admit, Chosen Family could have been the ending to the album. Which, was it my favorite song? No. But then it's followed by Snakeskin, which, I'll get into it in a sec, but everything will hit you from straight out of left field with this track. But it was very unexpected and highly impactful with just how much of a bop this thing was. So it's got this really cool build into the verse with this long intro part. And I'll just get the flaw out of the way. I thought the words on the verse were just a little bit weak, but the metaphor was definitely there. And while the words on this track as a whole are just a little repetitive, it does harken back to earlier parts of the album where they kind of has a bit of a mesmerizing effect. There is a Beethoven sample on this track, which super good stuff, like it very unconventional, and I can really appreciate branching out here. There's this spacey, almost industrial sounding breakdown that I thought was kind of incredible. And then when it's all said and done, it's got this sort of piano outro, which sounded just as dark as something off of Caligula. So that is the album. Incredible production. That phenomenal stuff. Sawayama's voice, amazing. Not a single flaw within her voice. The lyrical metaphors are strong pretty much every time here. And another one of the highlights was I never really knew what to expect. And on re-listens, this thing, it's not going to bore you. I could get through this no problem any day of the week, no matter what the situation. Is it entirely perfect? I would say no. There are a couple lyrical bits here and there that I didn't find totally satisfying. And the song doesn't have any moment that wows me nearly as much as it should. Of course, Tokyo Love Hotel and a couple other tracks had some moments that really floored me, but other than that, just not as consistently amazing. Anyway, overall, I think this album is a come to Brazil. I was pretty wowed with how fantastic a pop album made me feel. Really nice experimentation. Just great kind of overall. A lot of highlights, very few lowlights. This thing was awesome. And it kind of shocks me that some people would compare this to Dua Lipa's new album, because how could you even compare the two with how great Sawayama is and future nostalgia, really? But of course, a much more fitting comparison would be to Poppy's new album. I might get a little flack for this, but I'd say personally, I would put Poppy's album a little bit higher than this one. I think overall, though, album is more consistent. Like, I could say confidently that every song on here is better than one or two tracks off of Poppy's album, but more tracks on Poppy's album really wowed me. So that's just how I feel with that. If anyone was wondering, probably not. You know, all 5 of you out there probably cared, but that's just my take on 2020 in music, especially with the pop scene. And yeah, that's about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoyed my commentary, go ahead and like and subscribe. Subscribing helps me out a lot. It's totally free, and you get to watch my videos. Hit the bell icon if you want to be notified. If you guys have anything to say about this album, I'd love for you guys to comment. I will probably respond. I love talking to you guys. It's pretty much the strength of this channel, so go ahead and comment down below. Or if you want to DM me on my social medias, links will be down below, or go ahead and follow me. I would love that too. And yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys are having a good day. Bye.